So let's hear from our next speaker. Our second case study comes from Alliance members LearnFresh and the MBA. So to share on access to online STEM education, please welcome Nick Mozi, CEO and co-founder at LearnFresh.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Radha. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the response that we've undertaken over the last month to month and a half. For those of you who don't know, LearnFresh is a nonprofit organization that runs the NBA Matthews program in partnership with NBA Cares and Hasbro. And the program is really built to deliver foundational math, STEM, and social emotional skills directly to students in the classroom, which is where we've worked over the last 7 years, building out a league-wide infrastructure, working both on the NBA and WNBA side to engage students across the country. And as this crisis hit, and we as a nonprofit organization in particular have been thinking about ways that we can not only act on our mission, but also keep our organization sustainable over the long term, we've gone through a series of thought processes and laid out a series of plans that we've started to act upon that I hope can be valuable for you all. And I'll just walk you through the stages that we've been considering. So first off, like many of you, we're used to doing things in an in-person setting. And I think that's one of the beauties of sports is that while it does have, data and technology and all this infrastructure embedded within it, so much of the essence of sport is related to this in-person exchange. And that's how our program developed originally. And that's where most of our work has sat for a long time. So we're probably facing many of the same challenges that so many folks on this call are. Which is, how do you take the essence of that and put it into an environment that feels very different? So the three questions that we've really been considering, one is, where can you provide as an organization immediate, medium-term, and long-term value? As an organization that is on the ground, it's clear that there's an immediate need right now, but there's also going to be a medium-term need over the next year to 2 years. There's going to be a long-term need that may fundamentally change the way that students are learning. Both in the classroom and outside of it, and how can we be responsive as an organization to that? The second thing that we've been thinking through is just how do potential resources or responses that we put together look different from where we've already been headed, if at all? Because as a mission-focused organization, as a nonprofit, we have a certain path that we work on, and to be able to pivot, you have to know that what you're doing is responsive to the original mission that you have in place. And then related to that, what pivots can we make that fall within the scope of our mission and vision, or does our mission and vision as an organization need to change? And I think one thing that we've tried to remind ourselves about, and I've, in conversation with other organizations that have seen others think about this as well, is that not every organization has to be everything to all people, and that there may be some natural pivots that you can make as an organization, as the NHL has done with their program, that can open up access to more folks, which is ultimately the goal. So with those questions in mind, we've looked at three basic strategies that focus on families, students, and educators. We see, in the short term, but also over the medium term here, families have always been a source of education for students, maybe one of the most important. But with the uncertainty that our education system in the U.S. in particular faces as we head into the fall, families may become the primary source of education for students for some time. And it's hard to predict right now how that plays out, but it's something that we have to at least be ready for. So to immediately address that bucket, one of the first things that we did in the middle of March is we actually opened up access to our physical products. So for those of you who don't know, there's actually a board game that also sits at the center of this program. And we put out a call to families across the country, just opening up access to that if they wanted it at no cost. We're fortunate that Hasbro donates all the units of the game to us for free. And we've been able to secure over $100,000 in funding to support distribution of that. And I see that as an important element of this. We're talking about ed tech, but having something that families who don't have access to technology or ready access to technology can leverage to keep their students engaged. We've heard from many parents that, hey, I'm tired of my kids sitting in front of a screen. So while there's a lot of value there, having another alternative is really positive. And in places like Detroit, I saw the Pistons are on this call. We've reached over 1,500 families in a really short period of time by just having a strong outreach and a strong network in the community. As a follow-on to that, we're actually going to be running virtual tournaments with the program. So one of the staples of our Matthews program over time is that we've done in-person tournaments in arenas with hundreds of kids, and they've been amazing opportunities for students to connect. We're going to bring those online and do like an NCAA-style, bracket-style tournament with students using the Matthews game over Zoom. So it'll be a completely different experience, but still the same essence. Beyond that, we've started to think about how we can leverage technology to build upon what we've already been doing and secure additional funding for the sustainability of our work and also just to access more students. So two things that you may have noticed if you've been around the NBA social channels at all. We launched a NBA Math Break social media campaign with Junior NBA, basically having players, NBA, WNBA, walk students through foundational math concepts and STEM concepts. And I think social media is a huge opportunity right now. Beyond that, the work that Junior NBA is doing with the in-person, the kind of the virtual clinics, the little short workouts that they post, all that stuff is great. Social media is a tool where there's so many students and parents and families on all the time. You can provide great content for relatively low cost there. And then in addition to that, we've secured a $250,000 contribution, which is incredible, from AT&T to continue building out our mobile app. And basically what that'll allow us to do is build a comprehensive K-8 math platform for students embedded into the context of basketball and the NBA, and building off of our previous work with that product, which will allow students across the world to access foundational math learning. So that takes us through the short term and medium term, looking at how we get directly to students and directly to families. And the last piece, which we're honestly still working through right now, is just how do we continue to layer on top of that, work with educators and take what we've done in the past to create a system that allows educators to access our work, whether it be physically in the classroom or virtually online with their students. And some of the things that we're doing right now, like virtual tournaments, we're thinking about digitizing the actual board game itself to create an online infrastructure for that, building more extended social media series that allow us to disperse content at relatively low cost. All those things are things that we're kind of building out right now to make sure that when we get to the fall, we have a holistic, fully formed response that not only reaches students at home, but also in the classroom, as we have done for the last 7 years or so.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Wow, I've already learned loads today, guys. I'm super happy so far. Thank you for sharing that. You both organisations and your partners, you've clearly pivoted so quickly and really thought about the end user at all times, which is great. And we've got a question from the floor, and I'll share it with you. Both of you sort of touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. So C. Solomons from Chicago Fire FC has asked, how do we create independent learning for children so we don't add to the pressure for parents to facilitate that learning at a time when they may be trying to work as well? So any thoughts from either of you on anything that you've come across in your journey so far?
I can hop in real quick. So the essence of the mobile app that we've been building, and you're gonna see significant scale of that over the summer, is really to create a product that's engaging enough that students want to do it when they're on their own time. You know, it's tough competition with 2K, right? Like, kids would rather play 2K, I'm sure. But if we can give them an infrastructure and an environment where there's incentives and there's a gameplay mechanism that feels authentic and real, and there's some math concept embedded within it, maybe it's just the push from the parent or the push from the teacher to say, hey, here are some assignments in the app, or this is a great resource, check it out. That'll bring students to the table to focus on something educational first. So that's really the essence of why we're trying to build that product, and it's also why it's mobile based, right? So students can access it even if they don't have a computer, they can still access it on an Android device or on an iPhone or whatever they have. And then I think, parents, what we've heard from parents is that they want to try and do something, but they don't have time to do a lot, especially if they're still working or if they're a first responder or something like that. So for us, that's the role, like the physical board game plays that role because it's something that's traditional. It gives families in the environment, an environment where they can sit down at a table in front of each other and still have a collaborative, like fun learning environment that the parents feel comfortable participating in. Like that, getting over that hump of what are the parents comfortable with, I think is a big piece in making sure that we're reaching the students who need to be reached at this time.
Fantastic. So the summary is something so engaging that young people want to do it anyway and do it themselves, and then something that is low pressure to facilitate for parents, something that they might be more familiar with.